Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're located in North America. We are going to be starting our webinar, What Your OEM Isn't Telling You, in just a moment. We really want to give a special thanks out to Showroom Logic for putting the content together for today's webinar. But we're going to give just a few more moments for people to log in. So we'll probably, in about 2 more minutes, we'll be jumping right back in and we'll get this going. So thank you for your patience. All right, let's go ahead and get our webinar checked and get going here. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Today's webinar is What Your OEM Isn't Telling You. We really want to thank Showroom Logic for putting together content today. Very excited about this presentation. We actually reviewed it just yesterday, and great content that I think is extremely impactful for dealers. My name is Adam Shiflett. I'm going to be the moderator today. I'm with Driving Sales. And I'm kind of the guy who's going to be voicing questions, getting people engaged. And so let me just start out by just doing a few little housekeeping things. First is that you actually got when you logged in to go to a webinar, you saw there's a system that came up. We will be having questions throughout the presentation, at the end of the presentation. But as you go through the presentation, please log your questions, and we will get to them as soon as we can. We'll try and get as many as we possibly can. Let me introduce our presenter today. It's Patrick Bennett, the founder of Showroom Logic. Patrick, hello.
Hey.
So one thing, Patrick, I want to clarify is that your title of What Your OEM Isn't Telling You, are we going through a whole list today, or are we just doing like 1 or 2?
Yeah, I'll probably just focus on a few things they're not telling you.
Oh, okay. Because I mean, we only have like an hour here, so I want to make sure that we don't go over too much. So Patrick is actually the founder and CEO of Showroom Logic. He really is the Chief Product Officer, and Patrick's love for marketing and technology has helped him create consumer-oriented solutions that solve real problems. And what we're talking about today is solving the problem of how to really identify opportunities in your market that have been hidden, or let's say more difficult to find, particularly through the processes that OEMs are providing you as far as visibility to those. Just one last thing real quick is that the information that Patrick's going to be going through today, they actually have an evaluation through Showroom Logic that they'll be offering later. It's a free evaluation that we welcome everyone to take, extremely valuable, so we want to make sure that that is on there. We'll be sharing that information towards the end of the presentation on how you can actually do that. With that, let's go ahead and kick off our presentation. Patrick, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Appreciate it. So the last few months, I've been spending a lot of time with some dealer groups and looking at their data, understanding their challenges, and it's been interesting to see different perspectives. And I think OEMs are such an interesting dynamic, kind of as you made that joke, Adam. Their success is really based on your success, and sometimes I'm just surprised by the lack of help or knowledge or data they share with you to try to help you do better. So today, the hope is that you'll walk away with some strategies that will actually surprise them. Next time you talk to them, if you use some of these strategies, I think you might blow their mind a little bit, the way you're looking at your local market data and how that can help you be more effective. So I'm going to show today how data can drive strategy. So Adam mentioned I'm from Showroom Logic, and over the years, Showroom Logic has definitely done some things right. We're actually the customer satisfaction champion across all Google partners last year. We're actually the only automotive partner to win the Google Innovator Award. Obviously, me being the tech guy, pretty happy about that one. We're also the top performing mobile platform in automotive, and one of the fastest growing companies. So we're not a no-name company. We definitely have done some great things, and hopefully today you'll be able to walk away with some good knowledge of what I put together. I want to start by talking about just data in general, and one of my favorite quotes is actually by myself. And just that if you're looking at analytics and the data is not actionable, then you're really not looking at analytics. I think analytics by definition needs to be actionable for it to mean something. In this industry, we have a wealth of data. That's one of the things that attracted me to auto. So my promise to you today is that the data we'll look at is all going to be actionable. It's all things that if you look at it in the same way in your market, you'll be able to actually do something with it, and not just stare at some pretty charts or graphs and not really know where to go from there. Really just want to help you save everyone time in your organization to not go down inactionable rabbit holes that don't lead to any change. We really want the data to drive change. So we're going to focus on data today that can drive strategy and actually make things happen for you. So I don't know if you guys knew, but 2016 is the year of mobile. That's actually been the last 5 years in a row, at least it seems like. No, 2016 is the year of data. Data has to be the driver of your decision making and marketing. And anytime you see data, I want you to ask yourself, can I act on this? And if not, start digging deeper or look for a different source. People really listen to you when you have data to back it up. When I go meet with dealer groups and they're asking about strategy, I come in with data, and it helps them listen and think, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, because the data is the backbone of the conclusions he's making. So with the concept of what your OEM isn't telling you, one of the things we're going to be talking about today and focus primarily on is conquesting, the idea of conquesting other brands in your market. And in order to kind of kick this off, and we're making this a little more interactive today, we're going to start with a poll. So Adam's going to help me out here. I really want your feedback to kind of start. So take a second to close your ESPN page, find the webinar screen, and answer this question. So is conquesting primarily the OEM's responsibility or the dealer's responsibility? You can only select one. It's either the OEM or dealer. I'll give you a second to answer that. So the reason I'm curious about this question is because as I've been focusing on conquesting over the last few months, I've had many conversations with different dealerships. Some of them have said that they feel conquesting is really the OEM's responsibility and not their responsibility.
By the way, Patrick,
so do you have enough answers there?
Yeah, we're getting some responses in right now. I think we're ready to close the poll, so I'll go ahead and close it, and we'll see those results. There we go. There are the results up on our screen.
Wow, that's actually really awesome that many of you have feel that is the dealer's responsibility. I did say you couldn't say both here. I feel like conquesting varies a little bit of what the OEM can do and what the dealer can do. And today we're really going to focus on what you can do with data to actually create an effective conquest strategy and how you can move the needle in your backyard. So I'm actually glad that many of you are feeling that way. Some dealerships I've talked to recently have said, conquesting, that's really more for the OEM to worry about. That's their job. They have the big budgets. They can run the big car commercial campaigns on NBA games and stuff, and they're the ones that are going to help swing people. But the fact is, as we look at the data today, it really is something you should be concerned about. So that's what I'm going to convince you of today, if you're not already convinced. And if you are convinced, I'm going to show you some new tools to help you be a little smarter about it. So let's talk about what OEMs want. This is obviously kind of anonymous. We made this anonymous, but we've seen many of these reports before that come from the manufacturer. For example, this is Honda telling one of their dealerships that their sales effectiveness, which I think is a funny word in this case, is negative 31.57%. Or in other words, over the last 12 months, you're 1,083 units below what you're expected to be based on state averages. And we know that this, these efficiency scores are based on state averages, which we'll talk more about in a second. But basically, they come in and say you either suck or you rock, and but I'm not going to tell you what to do about it. You do need to sell more cars, but I'm not really going to help. And it's like, wow, thanks, appreciate that. So glad we're getting some help for you of knowing where to go. So this is what I want to talk about today, is actually using the way they calculate this efficiency to your advantage, and using data to actually help you figure out opportunities to help improve numbers like this. So when I'm talking about what they're not telling you, they might say you're performing, outperforming or underperforming your market, but they don't provide you with that actionable data, helping you understand the data in your market to know what to do about it. They don't really go deeper into competitive models and show you how they are doing. They also don't provide tactical recommendations on how to improve performance. And they, I think when we think of OEMs, these big companies, they have a ton of data, and they have a lot that could help you. And again, I'm not sure why they don't spend a little more time trying to help you create strategies. But I think we can come to our own conclusions using data without their help. So there is this wide gap between your OEM and your needs. It's actually pretty huge. And what you actually need to survive, and where you need to sell, and where they want you to be selling. In a perfect world, you could sell their vehicles in your assigned market area with perfect efficiency, and your sisters or cousins, whatever you want to call your other franchises under the same make, they'd keep to themselves in their market area. Kind of sounds like a franchise utopia, but we know that really can't happen. And OEMs really don't want to see you taking sales away from another dealership that they also are a part of. They'd much rather see fights, outside the family. I felt like this was a pretty timely picture. And this is really what the OEMs want to see. They want to see you fighting other makes and models, really focusing more on conquesting. They don't want you to fight your sister franchises. They want you to go after some other OEMs. And so in kind of looking again to those poll results, many of you do believe that it's an opportunity, that you as dealers have. And hopefully today we can look more about how this data can unlock that strategy for you. So when we're also talking about these markets, speaking with this dealership, I plotted their OEM market area, which is their ASA in this case, and where 70% of their Honda their sales are happening, and then looking at their addressable market, where additional 30% of sales are happening. What's interesting is this is a heat map, and one thing you see, for example, is this zip code right here. They actually have about 70% market share, yet it's outside of their ASA. Same thing with this zip code here and this one here. They actually are penetrating very well, but technically, in finger quotes, it's not where they're supposed to be selling. So again, we want to try to figure out, well, in this area that the OEM cares about, that he kind of scores me on, that a lot of my rebates and incentives and allocation are going to be based on, how can I help improve these numbers? Because at the end of the day, them feeling better about your results is definitely going to help everyone, especially if it can help you drive more sales. So we want to look at today of how data can help inform better decisions. One, understanding where sales are happening, so you can understand your biggest opportunities and which models you might want to be focusing more heavily on. Seeing what the competition is selling and where those purchases, the purchasers live. See sales opportunities based on data. Again, this is the year of data, guys, not gut. And we also want to help focus on models that are taking share in your market area. So it's actually a zero-sum game. The number of buyers in a given market doesn't change drastically month to month. It's all about how the pot is split. And so what we really want to look at in a market is understanding which vehicles are outperforming their expected sales, so that you can, ensure you're taking all other competing vehicles into account when you're driving your strategy. So we talked about what your OEM isn't telling you, right? So in this case, they're telling this dealer that they're deficient by about 21%, negative 232 units over the course of the year. What they're not showing is how all the other competing models are doing. So again, understand the dynamic of your market at the model level to see conquesting opportunities. So they go off of the state share of sales. That's how they calculate their efficiency rankings. They basically expect you inside your ASA, in this case for a Honda dealer, or PMA or AOI or APR. There's so many different acronyms. But in your designated market area, they expect you to perform at the same rate at the state level. And whether that's the best way to do it or not, I know there's some court rulings and stuff going on right now about that and whether it's fair. If this is the way they're scoring you today, you want to ensure you're looking at data in a similar fashion so you can find opportunities within the parameters they've set. So that's what's going to help you move the needle on the number and improve your relationship with them and what they're willing to do for you. So let's talk about today's consumer, because I'm starting to talk about this concept of conquesting and why would that be an effective way to reach today's consumer? Well, one thing that I can completely convince you of, and you may already believe, is that today's consumer is not brand loyal. Hopefully this isn't a spoiler alert that you guys really feel they love you, they're going to come back to you every single time they buy a car. I know this is a broad claim, but again, I'm going to use data to tell you why this is actually the case. And we're going to actually look at some data our friends at Google compiled. So in their study, they found that 87% of people consider multiple brands during the shopping process. This is actually a automotive shopper path to purchase study they did end of last year, and they surveyed a bunch of people. They looked at a bunch of ClickPaths, one of the biggest kind of studies of its kind. And what they found here is that even those that may have ended up with the same make, the vast majority were open to consideration. So what that actually looks like if we break it down is 71% of people switched brands, meaning they bought a different car than what is in their garage today. This is using Polk garage data. 12% are brand loyal, meaning they bought the same car, and 17% were first-time buyers through this study. So again, 71% switch brands, and that doesn't even consider the ones that maybe ended up being brand loyal, but through their searching considered multiple brands, and that's that 85% I was talking about before. So now if we talk about a buyer's path to purchase, I wish it was this simple, and I think maybe some of us in the industry feel it's this simple, or should be, or want to believe it's this simple, that they see a commercial on TV, they say, oh crap, a Toyota Camry, yes, I want to buy one. They go to their computer, find the nearest Toyota Camry dealer, they come in the next day and buy the car. It would be amazing if this was their path to purchase. Most likely, if this was the case, I'd be out of a job. This path to purchase leads really good job security for me, because it's extremely complex as a marketer to look at a typical buyer's path, seeing that their search behavior leads to brand discovery. So in the same survey, or in the same study, they actually looked at actual queries being performed across Google during a buying cycle. So they were actually able to tag people across devices during their entire journey and then match back a sale to the search queries they were doing. Now when we see here this path, this is a real path. This person considered 8 brands: Toyota, Chevy, Ford, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Nissan, Subaru, and actually looked at 6 different models as well: Yaris, Sonic, Focus, Fit, Civic, and Versa. So if any of you thought it was simpler, like the last slide, it's really time to wake up. This is the reality today, that people are really considering and open to consideration during the 60 days they spend to buy a car. So we know they're also open to influence from the start. So the study actually used 14,000 search paths to learn from. And across all those paths, they found that only 14% searched the same brand they ultimately bought. 14% bought the same brand they started with in their search. So with 63 people starting their search on a competitor's brand and 23% having no brand in mind, this shows that the vast majority of shoppers, about 86%, are open to influence during their shopping or discovery process online. Now, as far as what they're doing during that time and what their research is spent doing, 79% of it is doing brand comparisons. So again, when we look at the search queries they used, and we take the competitor brand searches of 50%, and then we look at searches with no brand at all, or segment, about 29%, it means 79% of their research activity is actually comparing brands and models. So 29% of the searches, this is important as well, we're actually on a specific segment. You know, sedans for sale, 2016 vans, 2016 van comparisons. When they're in that segment phase and using segment queries, and remember, about 30% of searches are segment queries, these are people with open minds. They're trying to consider options, and they haven't yet decided which model they're going to buy. And what we saw from the path before, even if they're showing behavior that they're starting to go toward one model, we know that that can switch very quickly. So that brings us to digital conquest. And I think the data we just showed backs up my claim that people today are not brand loyal. So we obviously know what conquesting is, right? You're a Honda dealer, Toyota dealer, you know, Ford, Nissan, whatever. You're going after competing models and competing makes. And for every single model, there's different makes you have to consider. It becomes a pretty dynamic game. And we want to use data to help point out the opportunities in your market so that you're not always just going off of national data. Just because Honda would love to see you conquest, you know, Camry every single time, it doesn't mean that in your market that's actually the vehicle you should be conquesting. I'm going to show you some examples of that in a second. So when we discuss the concept of digital conquesting, I'm talking about using digital marketing to capitalize on these conquesting opportunities. So I'm going to show you how data can help you in your market, in your OEM market, drive that digital strategy. Now, to talk about a successful marketing campaign, a digital marketing campaign, you need three things to be successful. One of those things is the right targeting. So demographics, behaviors, locations, all the different ways to target people. You want to ensure your targeting is spot on. You also need to have the right message. If you're going to enter into this complex conversation of brand consideration, what are you going to say to these people that's actually going to be meaningful to them? So message is crucial. Budget. If you aren't willing to pay to play, you might as well pack your bags and head home and let other dealers conquest you, because without the right budget, you're going to fail at conquesting. So without these three things, you're going to fail. With these three things, you can absolutely run a successful conquesting campaign. So what we're talking about here by doing these three things is really taking this shotgun approach that's been used for many years without data, where sure, you definitely hit some bullseyes, there's a lot of excess spend and waste outside of what your goals are. We like to talk about sniper rifles here at Showroom Logic, honing in on the right targeting, the right message, the right budget to really bring the most efficiency possible to your plan. So let's go again about what your OEM isn't telling you. Talk about this report again. Obviously, I'm hiding some stuff. We want to take off these fuzzy goggles that they kind of put on us sometimes and see how the data can help us find targets or areas that we want to focus on. So I talked about how this is a zero-sum game. This graph here, this grid, is showing a competitive group of segments. This is actually the Honda competitive grouping that they give on Accord. Malibu 200, Fusion, Sonata, etc. These are the groups of vehicles they say are the biggest threat to Honda Accord from a competition standpoint. So when we look at the way they measure Accord by, again, taking that state share and applying it to the PMA level, they come up with these expected numbers. Well, what we're actually able to do is apply that same math onto all the other models and know whether models are doing better than expected in the market. So for example, here I kind of highlighted a few interesting ones where Honda Accord, you could see that at the state level, Nissan Altima and Camry are the biggest competitors, right? I mean, they have the biggest share next to Accord in the state of California. However, we see in this market, Fusion, Sonata, and Passat of all vehicles is actually performing way better than expected. So even though Passat has a 3.5% market share at the state level, we see they're selling 143 or 97 units above what's expected of them, or 67% efficiency. So because Accord is deficient in this group, it's because other models are being more efficient. And that's where we start to open this, open our eyes of this is a zero-sum game. The only way for you to become more efficient for a model is to help or to cause another model to become less efficient. So we want to find those anomalies in the market and say, okay, these are some of the biggest conquest opportunities. In this case, Camry, even though it's high volume, we can see it's actually deficient. So Camry also isn't doing so well in this market. So while we may want to do some Camry conquesting, it might not be as applicable in our market as Passat, Sonata, or Fusion, because these are the ones doing better than expected and most likely being the cause of this Honda dealer doing worse than expected. Now, what's very important to understand is every market is different. Let's look at another Honda market where we see in this case, it's actually Subaru Outback outperforming what it's supposed to do. So we see again that this dealership has an opportunity to focus on a model they probably wouldn't think about, most likely. But because in their market, this is the dynamic of what's occurring, they can now have better understanding of what to go after. So then we want to be able to drill in and see, okay, for one of these models, where are sales happening? So let's look at a competing model like to Civic would be a Jetta, and we can see by zip code where sales are happening. Again, these are zip codes that make up this dealer's OEM, PMA, and actually start to see, okay, here's where Jetta sales are occurring in my backyard. If I'm going to reach these people that are affecting me and not coming to me, I need to understand where those sales are happening. What we can also drill into is, okay, where are these people going? Where can they buy? So when it comes to buying a Jetta, we see there's a dealer in the backyard that's doing really well. He actually has 85% of the market share within my territory, my OEM territory. So we know that people are traveling about 13 miles away from me to go buy a Jetta when they could, buy from me only 4 miles away. But it's a matter of helping them understand that you have a comparable model at your store that is, that they should consider, and that's part of that consideration phase. So now that we're able to kind of hone in on some of these opportunities, I talked about the importance of creating the right message. When it comes to creating the right message, you have to do some research and take the time. Research the competition, because you don't want to go into battle without a plan. Think about it. You're trying to cut in with this consumer at a dance. They're going to want to know pretty quickly what you're up to. Why should I listen to you? Okay, I'm focused on Jetta right now. I'm showing Jetta behavior. Why should I buy a Civic or an Accord? So it's all about how you differentiate yourself. For example, as they're researching Jetta in your market, this is what they're seeing. This is what the Volkswagen dealership down the street is offering right now, $3,500 off MSRP for a Memorial Day sale. If you're trying to get in front of this Jetta consumer without a comparable message for your vehicle, you're not going to stack up very well. And the consumer is going to be very confused of why you're a good option. For example, Nito Volkswagen over here is going after this big savings amount and a really aggressive lease, giving the consumer different options, leading with payment, leading with price, leading with 0% APR for financing, kind of checking all boxes here. This dealership is only focused on price. Now, as a consumer, again, if I'm in the comparison phase, if I'm in this research phase and I'm trying to compare vehicles, price is obviously very important to me, right? And if I at least, in this Honda dealer, and I can't match my messaging to what he's seen on these competing brands, I'm going to fail. So even with the right targeting, even if every time an impression hits, you're getting in front of this Jetta buyer, if your message does not line up with their expectations of what they're seeing through their research, you're going to fail. So again, messaging is so crucial. And yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes strategy. Yes, yes, yes. But it works when you take the time to do it. And the sophisticated dealers are doing it today. It's also really important to talk about conquesting in general, how it can broaden your reach. And that's really a benefit of conquesting, especially with digital. In simple terms, if this dealer, this Honda dealer, is focusing on marketing 3 core models that they really want to drive, Accord, Civic, CR-V, their core models, they need to sell more in their market. They can only reach so many people by focusing on those core models, because with digital marketing, you're going after behaviors and targets. And if you're focused on behaviors central to these core models, you only can reach a limited amount of people. If you expand your reach to look into conquesting the 3 or 4 vehicles per model that you're going after, all of a sudden you're expanding your reach by huge margins. In this case, it would be 9x that you're increasing your overall reach. So if you could simply create a plan, I'm not saying create a 3 to 4 model plan per core model. That would take way too much time. But for the 2 or 3 models you need to become more efficient on, you should absolutely be looking at turning on 3 or 4 conquesting campaigns per model in order to expand your reach and get into these conversations and buying paths that we've looked at. So if you're conquesting the right vehicles, again, based on the data, then that exposure is worthwhile. If you're conquesting these vehicles without targeting data or without the right message, save your money. It's not going to work. So I know you guys are already spending a lot of money on conquest campaigns. This is very timely. I didn't doctor this. I actually got this in the mail last week. You can see, congratulations, Patrick. So someone is trying to conquest me right now because I'm coming off a lease. So they're using some of this data. They have proper targeting. They have a pretty good message leading with aggressive payments of why I should come off. So again, you guys are doing it right in a lot of places, but we don't see it happening in digital marketing. And that's where we really want you guys to be more consistent with your message. Make sure you have a plan and strategy. Just like strategy and planning went into this document that was sent to me, the same type of strategy should go into digital marketing. As long as you have the right targeting, the right message, and you apply a healthy budget, it's going to work out. So now I want to talk about the different places you could put your spend to turn this into a digital strategy. I want to stop real quick and ask another poll. This is actually the last poll, so I hope you guys can participate. Are any of you today running digital conquesting campaigns on these networks? So AdWords, Bing, YouTube, Facebook for Business. If you could take a second and answer this, very curious today what the adoption is for conquesting on these networks. So while you guys are doing that, I'm actually going to dive into each one of these and talk about their benefit of why you may want to consider conquesting, and also what the expectation should be, because anytime you turn on a network for a specific purpose, you want to make sure you have the right expectations in the results it can drive for you. Okay, awesome. Definitely see 74% adoption of these networks, about 25% of you know. So I'm going to compare each one of these for you. So if you are running some of these today, hopefully some of this insight will benefit you or maybe help you consider some additional networks. Let's talk about our favorite one, Google. Google is by far the largest automotive network. And the reason I can say that is if you actually look at all queries happening on Google, it's way bigger than AutoTrader, Cars.com, all those places where people can look at inventory combined. By a very large stretch, it is the largest network. Now, because of that, though, it's also highly competitive. One thing about AdWords is it's a quality score driven auction, which means those ads that are more relevant get better performance and don't have to pay as much as ads that are less relevant. That does not mean it can't work. We see many conquesting campaigns work on Google. It's just you need to have the right expectations again. So I would have you expect to spend 2.5 times on CPCs in order to be in a position that actually will mean something. And then I would also tell you to ensure you have coverage on your segments. So as people are typing in, trucks for sale, new trucks for sale, Los Angeles, vans for sale, those segment queries are super important because that is a buyer who is looking at competitive segments today but has not made up their mind. They haven't made up their mind yet if they're typing that in. So what a great way for you to enter the conversation. And for those types of queries, you can actually be highly relevant because you'd have trucks for sale. You can say trucks in your ad. You can drive them to a truck page. When it comes to them typing in model queries, like in this case, my example, new Hyundai Sonata, and you're a Chevy dealer and you want to get your Impala in front of them, you can definitely say some things, but the landing page is not going to have Sonata content, right? Unless you build an Impala versus Sonata page, which would be awesome, and I'd hope you take the time to do that. But for many of you driving to VDPs or SRPs, you're going to lack quality score. Again, doesn't mean you can't show up, just means expect higher CPCs, and a higher CPC drives a higher cost per lead. But we do see similar conversion rates. Similar to the core model marketing you're doing, you'll see a similar conversion rate, you're just going to pay a little bit more. But again, if it allows you to open up your exposure, get into places you're not in today, then it's definitely going to be worthwhile. Let's talk about the redhead stepchild, Bing. We actually love Bing, and it's a very great place to do conquesting as well. And I only kind of make that joke because I think so many dealers have kind of waved off Bing, but I think you're making a mistake if that's the case. Because one thing we see on Bing is they're actually very mature buyers. Actually, 72% of them are 35 plus. 50% of them have an income over 75K. You can also do keyword targeting, zip targeting, just like Google. Quality score also can add some complexity, but because the competition is less than AdWords, you can actually see lower cost per leads than AdWords. I would actually have you expect 20 to 30% lower cost per lead than AdWords, but that's 30 to 40% less volume than Google. So definitely a place you want to be. Just don't expect a ton of volume coming out of it, but you should see high quality leads. Again, ensure you're doing segment queries as well. You want to have coverage for people searching for segments, trucks, vans, sedans, things like that is going to be super important. Let's talk about video for a second. So of all the ad formats out there, purchasers, this is again part of Google's study, they chose online video ads as the #1 format for expanding the consideration set. So that might be surprising to you, but it actually makes sense. Automotive videos, when they're distributed online, they combine sight, sound, motion in a great environment that helps them do research quicker than reading. And this is how a lot of people are consuming media today. So in the study, in the survey, people actually said one of the reasons they loved video was that it helped them learn about vehicles they hadn't previously considered. So again, these people who are thinking about a certain model see a video and say, oh man, I never compared the Camry to an Accord. I really should have done that. I didn't know it had these features or options, or that there was a super aggressive lease right now. Consideration, people love consideration on video, and YouTube is the #1 video platform. Again, it's actually the #1 place people watch video today. Over TV and everywhere else, they consume more video on YouTube than anywhere else. Great thing about YouTube is you can do interest targeting. You can combine video content and voice into a great ad. And you can see a very low cost per view. Do not expect a lot of clicks coming from YouTube. It is not a click driving campaign. It is a way to increase exposure and have an impact on your search and display activity. And there's been many studies that show that when you're running very strong YouTube campaigns, it actually can increase your search behavior. So a great way to broaden your reach at a very low cost. You might need to spend some time creating some, good quality comparison videos, but they're not that hard to do. There's some great providers out there that can help streamline that process. Again, it takes time, guys, but when you create these comparison videos, you can use them for the entire year. So just definitely something to consider. Let's talk about Facebook, kind of the up-and-coming network that could, right? They have a very low cost per visitor. 86% of their traffic is mobile, so a great way to reach those mobile buyers. You can do the best demographic targeting of any network because of the profile data they have, and you can do zip targeting as well. As far as expected results, expect very high volume, so you can drive a lot of traffic. It's a good click driver at low CPCs, but you are going to see a lower conversion rate when it comes to form leads. But that's okay, considering the lower cost per click. You can typically see cost per leads comparable with AdWords and Bing and other places. But you definitely need to watch your phone calls. People on mobile are more apt to call than they are to fill out a form. So as you are driving a lot of clicks, don't worry too much about your form lead conversion rate. You have to look at your overall conversion rate, taking phone calls into context as well. So again, having good content on Facebook, again, targeted to people who are looking at different segments or looking at comparable models that you want to be conquesting, is definitely another good place to do it. There's a lot of other places in the industry, right? You can run ads on cars.com, AutoTrader, Cars Gurus, AutoWeb is another up-and-coming network, Jumpstart, Display. But it's important that you ask the right questions to make sure these networks are actually right for you. I want you to ask, does it allow zip code targeting? If you can't get down to the zip code for the models you want to target, I would say for conquesting, you're not going to have targeted enough settings in order to justify that. Can you do model-specific targeting? So can you say, I only want to show my Accord ad to people searching for Passat, for example? Is there good post-click tracking? And this is crucial, ensuring that anyone who does click when they come to your site, can you track them all the way to a form lead or a phone call? If you can't, I would suggest not using that network. Can you set campaign-specific budgets? So can you have a budget specific to your Accord and a different budget specific to your Civics? You need to isolate these budgets when it comes to these campaigns so you have enough healthy spend in order to justify it. And then also, can you do that vehicle segment targeting? Can you go after body styles as well? That's also important as well. So when you turn on these conquest campaigns on these networks, I do want to give you a word of caution. Do not try to compare results side by side. Just as I said that Google, AdWords, Bing, and Facebook all work a little differently, you do not want to line them up side by side and say, YouTube sucks because it's not driving as many clicks as AdWords. That defeats the purpose of the network. You really need to look at each network independently and actually aggregate all the data as one conquest strategy to see if it's working or not. We just talked about buyer complexity, right? We talked about how they go through all these different search queries, and I didn't even show the 19 different websites that they go through when they're searching as well. So that same person you hit on a YouTube video, you might also hit them on Facebook, AdWords, and Bing, which is fantastic. You hit them in all four places, but if you try to isolate a cost per sale by each network, you're going to fail, and it's not going to look good. You're not going to line things up. So really ensure you aggregate the data across your conquest campaign, across networks, and look at it that way to see if it's working. Do not isolate these into their own buckets and try to get too deep. You know, it sounds good, but it just does not work when you're looking at the data that way. Also, do not change it up too fast. These buyers, they take about 60 days to buy. So if you turn on something today and you start getting someone who's just entered into the cycle, you're going to need 90 to 120 days to know if your messaging is working. So turn on a strategy, again, with data, and be patient to measure the results. Don't switch things around a few days in. Do not vary your message by network. Do not have one lease offer on AdWords that you're not showing on YouTube. You're going to hit the same person on these networks. Make sure you have consistent messaging. That's extremely important. So with everything I've talked about today, my goal is that you'll be able to surprise your OEM. you've now used OEM markets to help you understand performance, find the outliers. Your OEM is actually going to be shocked when you're saying, "Hey, I want to do conquesting." Like, what? This is awesome. OEMs actually co-op a lot of conquesting efforts as well through these programs. So make sure you ask them about that, and if they're not, press them hard on it. Say, "Hey, I'm actually investing my dollars into doing something that you should be helping me on. I expect some co-op dollars for that." I think we can all start pressing on that. And also, it's great that you can be piggybacking their efforts in their backyard. The big budget stuff they do from a conquesting standpoint, you can build onto that inside your market that gets more specific into what you need. So as we're summing it up here about what I've talked about today, shopping behavior, as I showed by the data from Google, is ripe for conquesting. Sales and registration data help you find opportunities, and messaging is key. You have to have the right message if you're going to be touching these people. And the various networks that you can turn these on with in digital marketing, they all hold different opportunities. So what I want to do actually right now for about 5 minutes, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, is I want to show you how you can kind of build one of these in real time. So as was mentioned, we do have a free market report that you can download at zipdriven.com, which will actually pull your market share data and help you find opportunities. So feel free to go there and download. Also, I love hearing feedback from dealers. This is my personal company email out there, pat@showroomlogic.com. Please email me. Would love to hear your feedback from this, and also any stories or challenges you're facing today. That's where I learn the best, is interacting with you guys.
Hey, so Patrick, real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to send out that link so everybody has it. It will be in your chat panel, so you have access to be able to pull the report that Patrick is referencing. So I'll just send that out right now.
Great, thanks, Adam. So what I'm going to show you right now is inside our tool, ZipDriven. This is using sales and registration data. I want to walk through a scenario that shows you kind of how easy this is to come up with a strategy when you have the right data. When we're looking here for this dealership in San Antonio, we're looking at a year's worth of data. And again, a lot of times it's important to help the law of averages work for you. Look at a date range that's large enough to actually see the dynamic of the market, because things can swing a little bit. So I'm looking at a year's worth of data, and right now I'm looking at dealers' market share by vehicle. And this 0 to 10 range, this is pretty much their PMA that they would need to be concerned about. And so what we see right away, and I'm just going to focus on one model today because of time, we see Expedition. It's a vehicle they have 23 in stock of. Average age is about 112 days, which is a little longer than some of their other vehicles. And so this could be a great candidate for creating the strategy. So let's jump into Expedition here. And I'm going to pull this Conquest report I was talking about before. So what it just did for me is calculated the Texas share of sales for these competitive models, then gave me expected sales, and then tells me which ones are actually doing better than expected in the market. So can see, for example, that I, as a Ford Expedition, I'm 25% deficient, less than or 36 units below what Ford would expect me to sell inside my market. So what's interesting is you can actually look at this data in other buckets as well, and you'll see that other vehicles actually come into play. Armada, for example, isn't doing super well here, but when I go 10 to 20 miles out, Armada is actually doing 105% better than expected. So it's really cool that as you want to, focus on different markets, that it actually gives you the data specific to that market to help you find opportunities. So let's talk about this Yukon, for example. I talked about how this is a zero-sum game, and the fact that I'm deficient 36 units at this Ford dealership, it's because other vehicles are outperforming what they're supposed to do. So we see Yukon being one of those. So let's dive in a little deeper, and what we can see quickly here is the different dealerships that are selling Yukon. And I can see this guy right here, Cavender Buick. He by far is the biggest Yukon dealer. So again, if I'm going to start conquesting Yukon to push my Expeditions, I got to understand what Cavender's doing. and maybe what he's leading with right now in his marketing. I need to have the right message. Well, we love Google, right? So I just go Cavender, Buick GMC, can find them real easily. Jump in here, and then I want to see, okay, what are they doing? What are some of their specials? I see something right away on their homepage, $9,000 off Yukons. Okay, so this is obviously very big for them, something they're pushing right now, offering large discounts on Yukon. So if I am going to lead with, again, Expedition, and I'm thinking about messaging to line up with Yukon, if I can't have something comparable of showing discounts, incentives or offers or different things to show something comparable, how am I going to compete with this guy? So again, aligning message isn't that hard. It takes a little work to go investigate and see. But if that's the guy in my market who is pushing the most metal of a competing vehicle, I should definitely understand what he's doing in his marketing so I can make sure mine's aligned. And if you're the internet director or someone else in your dealership, when you go to the powers that be and show this and you have data supporting it, they're going to think, wow, you actually took the time to create a strategy that makes sense and is driven by data. This is where we can start aligning all departments inside, all marketing inside the dealership. What we can also do is understand in the zip code which zip codes are driving the most performance. So again, I see right away 78209, not that far away from me, and actually there's no GMC dealer in this. The guy we're concerned about is up here. This top selling Yukon zip code actually isn't even in super close to him. It's actually pretty close to me as well. So we start to see overwhelmingly that these 6 zip codes here are where the most Yukon buyers are. So again, when it comes to AdWords or Bing or Facebook or pre-roll, I want to ensure I'm at least targeting these zip codes as well, because these are where over the last year the most Yukon sales are happening. This is where the customers live who actually register those vehicles. So in a few minutes, I've identified a vehicle I should, I need some help with, need to push more vehicles, the Expedition. I'm able to look at who in my market or which vehicles in my market are doing better than expected. I'm able to understand which dealerships are driving those sales so I can align my marketing, and then I can see at the zip code level where I absolutely need to have some targeting turned on in order to target them. So a lot of stuff I talked about today, it's not that difficult. It doesn't take that much time if you have the data and tools to get you there. And there's a few different platform and tools out there. We have one as well that we're excited about. But overall, just using the data and strategy, it can help you. So with that, I'm going to stop, turn the time back over to Adam, open up to Q&A.
Yeah, Patrick, thank you so much. Now let me just remind everyone really quickly. We do have some questions already, but if you would like to ask a question, go ahead and type it into the question pane. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. Patrick, obviously we only have so much time, so I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to follow up with these questions if we can't get through all of them today.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to.
Perfect. Okay. So feel free to enter as many as you'd like, but I'm going to start with a really short story. Back when I was a marketing manager at our dealership, one of the things that I was responsible for was preparing for the OEM allocation meeting. And one of my biggest things I had to do was actually go through the Polk data. This was a few years ago. I won't say how long, but actually create an Excel spreadsheet and drive in and actually create just what you did in probably 20 seconds. So Patrick, I both love what you just did and kind of hate it. The past me is probably cursing you for the months and weeks I had to prepare for that meeting. So really great data there. So let me jump into it with a few questions here. Is that first, and this has to do with the search terms that are going through that you actually brought up and showing the amount of searching that happens and kind of how the buying process really happens on Google. Is what's the average number of brands that people consider during the buying process?
Yeah, so based on the data I shared today, it's 8 brands that are considered, at least as far as Google's study they did by looking at search queries. So there might be some other studies that look at other other data that I might not be aware of, but at least the study I shared today, it's 8 brands.
Perfect. Okay, and this is more of a comment, but I think this actually is a very valuable comment that we should share. Is that and this is back when, once again, during that point where you were showing all the searching that's going on, is that a year ago this would have taken months. Today they can do it in a day from home. So
such a good comment. Yeah, I mean that path doesn't necessarily take them 60 days. That query path could literally take them 90 minutes. So yeah, they're switching quick, and that's why I want to be there ahead of time. So when they're showing that behavior, we can be in front of them.
Yeah, great. So next question here is that how are you getting this data on other brands in a PMA?
Yeah, so that's where we kind of feel like OEMs fall short, right? They they give you a lot of data for your own brand, but they don't give the data for other brands, and that's where sales and registration data comes in, because it's not RDR, it's not information that can't be shared. It's actually sales and registration data from DMVs that can be purchased. You can buy it through Polk, Experian, Dominion. We actually use Experian as our data partner but it's all, the data source is the same. It's DMV sales and registration data.
Perfect. Well, and like I said, I've used that data before and had to do my own analysis. So this report that we actually shared is extremely valuable. Like I said, the past me might come through the telephone and choke you, but this is brilliant how this process goes now. Another question, this actually has to do with our friends up in Canada, is do you have Canadian data?
Yeah, unfortunately we don't today, and it's something we've been exploring. The principalities up there don't sell data like DMVs do down here, so I am not aware yet of a kind of a public source that can be used to draw some of these same conclusions. So I think we could go about it in different ways. I think it just takes a little more diving, but that's one we're definitely trying to figure out as well, is how can this be applicable in Canada.
Great. Well, unfortunately, everybody, we don't have very much more time to ask questions, but Patrick, I know that you offered to answer any questions. Could you give that email address just one more time so that anybody that would like to ask you a question directly has your email?
Absolutely. It's just Pat, P-A-T, at showroomlogic.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
At showroomlogic.com.
I actually have time for one more question real quick. This apparently is someone that arrived late. Let me just remind everybody that I believe Patrick, one more time, we're going to be contacting and sharing the presentation and some video of the presentation as well for all who attended or didn't get to attend, so they'll be able to get that information as well. But the question is that how does this information compare with String Auto?
It's very similar information. So String is also, a great product and tool that is backed by, I think they use Polk data, but again, it's still sales and registration data. But their tool is very similar in that they're trying to help you find opportunities. So I think for a more in-depth comparison, we could kind of walk you through the tool and stuff. But at the surface, as far as what data we're using, we're both using similar data sets.
Perfect. Okay. Well, great. Hey, Patrick, thank you so much. This is extremely good information. I mean, obviously, we've had you back a few times. We really, really love your presentations and the information you share at Showroom Logic, and obviously your insights personally. So, thank you so much for being on the webinar today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd just say that a lot of it comes from speaking to dealers, and that's one of my favorite things to do. So, understanding challenges and trying to come up with solutions and just help us all be a little smarter. That's what I find exciting. So happy to do it.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you everyone else for attending. Thank you for taking some time out of your day. Once again, we do have new webinars coming out all the time. Just a little side note for all the friends up in Canada, we do have our Canadian Dealer Forum coming up the end of next month, so make sure you're looking at that. And also, Dealer Executive Summit Registration is now open, so it's at the lowest price. So now is the opportunity, if you're going to be attending, to take advantage of those low prices. So thank you once again. This will end our presentation. Thank you, Patrick, and all of Showroom Logic for the support that you've been giving us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.